Hello again. After just a short absence, wanted to do a very quick video about the news that was just breaking. I was actually just getting ready to go to bed, and I got notification through my news feed that the president of Iran, Raisi, I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, that he actually did in point of fact die. In my last video, I referenced the fact that he was presumed dead. Now it's being widely reported that he is confirmed dead, that they found the crashed helicopter and that everyone on board died. And but Candy doesn't know that she's forgotten that she already got a treat, and now of course she wants another one. So I'm ready. She only gets a little one this time. Shake, lay down, speak. Oh, I get a better one this time. Anyway, hi Sharunian. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I used to have a big flowing beautiful curly locks that would blow in the wind. Now nothing up top hardly. Anyway, just to talk about the news, I want to reference something that I think a lot of people who watch my channel will be familiar with, but then again, maybe not everyone is. Back in the early 1960s, during the John F. Kennedy administration, so sometime 60, 61, 62, in that area, after the Cuban Revolution, after Castro and his forces had overthrown the Batista regime in Cuba, Castro was now the leader of Cuba. And initially, the Americans were not ill-disposed to having Cuba run by Fidel Castro, provided he allowed the status quo to continue. They didn't care whether the dictator was Batista or whether it was Castro, so long as Castro continued to sell things like Cuba's sugar and other produce to American corporate interests at below market rates and to generally oppress the Cuban population. But Castro wasn't interested in that. He actually seized land that had belonged to U.S. corporate interests and introduced a national farming program. Anyway, so the Americans were not happy with Castro. Initially, Castro, after becoming the leader of Cuba, he came to New York. He was on television. He was being celebrated, but then he became persona non grata, and the U.S. initiated its trade embargo. And the Americans wanted Cuba back within its sphere of influence, especially after Castro cozied up to the Soviets. And so a plan was put forth. A plan was put forth by the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the United States. And you can look into this. It's not conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy fact, but it's a conspiracy that was never carried out. It was a plan by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It was codenamed Operation Northwoods. And what they proposed was to crash planes into buildings, to sink ships, to commit other acts of domestic terrorism on U.S. soil in order to build support for a war of invasion. They wanted to invade Cuba again. The Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted to invade Cuba and bring it back into the U.S. sphere of influence. The CIA loved Cuba because they could operate without having to be subject to U.S. law or the U.S. Constitution. That's why Guantanamo Bay is in Cuba, because that's why they could get away with what they did down in Gitmo, because they're not subject to the U.S. Constitution. And anyway, one of the components of Operation Northwoods at this time, John Glenn was about to orbit the U.S., about to orbit the planet Earth. He was about to become the first American in space to orbit the planet. And what Operation Northwoods called on was for, if some accident should have happened to John Glenn during his space flight, they wanted it blamed on Cuba for the same reason, again, to support a war of invasion. What does that what does Operation Northwoods have to do with this helicopter that went down carrying Iran's president and the country's foreign minister? I finally know the title of the other senior ranking government official, Iranian government official. He was the foreign minister. So it's the president, the foreign minister, and some others. Obviously, the pilots or pilot of this helicopter. It's already being reported widely that Iranian state media has declared that he had, this Iranian President Raisi, or Raisi, however you say it, that he is now martyred. He is now a martyr to the cause. And it's like, he went to Azerbaijan, the foreign minister and the president, they went to Azerbaijan for the opening ceremony of a hydroelectric dam, or a dam in any case. And this was their return trip. They weren't furthering, this wasn't a jihad they were on. It was, a visit of they were visiting a foreign country for an opening ceremony of a dam of some description, and they were on their way back. It's not like they were engaged on the front lines with Hamas, Houthis, or Hezbollah in the ongoing battle with Israel. They were just conducting what I would consider to be normal Iranian domestic and international affairs, but they're declaring him a martyr, which leads me to suspect that Iran may try to blame Israel for this crash, the same way that the Americans were proposing to blame any accident that happened, if an accident were to have happened to John Glenn in his orbit of the planet Earth. The Joint Chiefs of Staff wanted that blamed on Cuba. Well, this is where I see it being similar. When you get back to Operation Northwoods, it was never acted on. There's a book called Body of Secrets, written by a guy named James Bamford, Bamford. He's actually a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. And he published this book, I think sometime in the 80s, called Body of Secrets, Freedom of Information Requests. He was able to obtain declassified documents about Operation Northwoods. And it was part of a book called Body of Secrets, and very well known in journalistic circles. James Bamford, again, winner of a Pulitzer Prize. And will Iran now say that it was Israel responsible for the downing of this helicopter? I think anything's possible. The helicopter he was flying on, widely reported, is a Bell 212 helicopter, first produced in 1968. The Iranian Air Force, their helicopters, their planes, are all said to largely be pre-1979 equipment that predates the Islamic Revolution, because up until 1978, 1979, Iran wasn't very much a close ally of the United States, and they were supplied with U.S. military equipment. But after the Islamic Revolution, then Iran cozied up with the Soviet Union, with what we now call Russia, which at that time was full-blown communist. And so they were cut off. And as a result, they're still flying around in helicopters like this Bell 212, first came off the line in 1968. And so you have an aging helicopter that doesn't go much over 100 kilometers an hour. and it's flying in foggy, bad weather, apparently raining and heavy fog over treacherous terrain, very mountainous, treacherous, unpopulated, which is why I think it took around a day to locate the actual crash site. And now they've determined that the president and his foreign minister and everyone else on the plane all dead. And now will Iran blame Israel and use it as justification for an escalation in the conflict that's been ongoing since shortly after October 7th between Israel and Iran's proxy forces? Iran, for the most part, rather than attacking Israel directly, they attack them through Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis, who are down in Yemen. However, as we all know, Israel struck at Iran by taking out senior military members of Iran's Republican Guard by firing on either the Iranian embassy in Damascus. Sometimes it's referred to the consulate. The Israelis claim that they attacked. They actually don't claim that they never took responsibility for the attack, but they say that the building that was hit, that it's actually an annex to the embassy, not part of the embassy itself, that it's actually a military facility, and as such represents a legitimate military target. Because typically speaking, embassies are considered no-go zones. They're supposed to be protected. And so Israel has said they haven't claimed responsibility for that attack, although pretty much everyone in the world, myself included, assumes they were the ones responsible. But they say that the building that was hit by rocket fire missiles, that it's actually not the embassy itself, not even the consulate, but is rather an annex, a building attached, that is a military installation, a military facility, and as such would represent a legitimate target. But that's old news. After that attack by Israel, a week or so later, Iran launched a massive attack. Hundreds of rockets and drones and missiles were aimed at Israel. Apparently, very few got through out of hundreds. 3 or 4 got through. One apparently did some damage to an Israeli, I think it was an air base, an Air Force base. Depends who you listen to. According to the Iranians, substantial damage. According to the Israelis, minimal. No deaths. There was one young girl, a Bedouin girl, who was who would be Arab or Muslim, Bedouin, who was either killed or seriously injured by an attack. The thing about war is the first casualty is truth. You can never be 100% sure about anything. This Raisi is being referred to in many reports as the butcher of Tehran. And I'll mention it, but I'm not going to use those terms because, quite honestly, I don't know enough about the history. And I know that propaganda is to be expected from all sides, my side, the opposing side, every side in military battle. All sides in war engage in propaganda. The Israelis engage in propaganda, as do the Iranians and their proxy forces, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, the 3 H's. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. Is Iran going to, and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, are they going to start to claim that this wasn't just a case of a 50-year-old helicopter, out of date equipment? I mean, in Canada, we had Sea King helicopters that were falling out of the sky because the things were so old for years before they were replaced. And so, is it that much of a shock that a 50 odd year old helicopter flying in bad weather conditions over dangerous terrain would crash? Unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people who are so consumed with hatred toward all things Jewish, to Jews, and all things related to Israel, that they'll latch on to anything. And so they'll blame Israel for this. And I can see Iran trying to capitalize on this hatred that exists. It's called anti-Semitism, not my favorite term, but it is what it is. That's the most popular term for those who hold a strong, vehement hatred toward Israel and all things Jewish. And anyway, we'll see what happens. Sharunian Allegiance, who last time I was getting your name wrong. I was calling you Sojourner Didymus, which is another individual, and I apologize for that. I can't blame, I shouldn't just default and blame my age whenever I make a mistake. I apologize for that, though, Sharunian. You're not Sojourner Didymus. I believe Sojourner Didymus, that username, regular contributor to my channel, is actually, I think he's from the Netherlands. I think he's either Dutch or Friese. Anyway, Christian Apologist says, "Goodbye evilness, good riddance. What a good day for us and Israel." If these claims in the press about this Raisi, again, I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce his name, he's being depicted and called the butcher of Tehran or the butcher of Iran, whatever the case. If these reports are true, I watch a gentleman by the name of Amir Tsfardi. Many will be familiar with him. He has a YouTube channel. He is an Israeli. He's, I believe, he's former IDF. I think he had the rank of major. He's also a Messianic Jew, meaning he's a Christian, but was born and raised Jewish. Christian Apologist brings up something that I hadn't even considered. This is why I enjoy the engagement. This is why I enjoy doing these live. He was saying that it could be a fake death. Anything is possible in today's world. Anything is possible. You cannot trust the mainstream news, but you also likewise cannot trust what you see on Telegram or Parler or YouTube or any other social media network. You have to be incredibly circumspect and incredibly skeptical of everything, not just the mainstream. We know the mainstream lies. They told us COVID came from a wet market, and that any suggestion that it came from out of a lab and that it had been a gerrymandered, a rigged, an engineered virus, that was crazy conspiracy theory with no foundation in reality. And now everything, the conspiracy theory has become the predominating accepted mainstream narrative. So you never know what to believe in today's world. And I've said from the beginning, with this war between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, and these are all Iranian puppets, and they're all they're doing the bidding of their Iranian masters. And Iran to this day does not recognize Israel's right to exist. They want, like the Palestinians, they endorse this, from the river to the sea push all the Jews into the Mediterranean, kill all the Jews or drive them all out. And then probably be another war between Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia. They'll probably all fight over who gets the land, because that's what happened between 1948 and 1949 when Britain abandoned their mandate. Britain left it. They said, we're done, getting out of here. And they abandoned the mandate. And then 5 nations invaded. And some of the Arabian Palestinians stayed. About 800,000 Arabian Palestinians or Muslim Palestinians fled, either fled fighting. Some got out before the fighting started. Some fled after the fighting started. But around 800,000 fled. I think a couple 100,000 remained. And they were joined by invading forces from 5 invading nations. So they joined forces with them, and they fought against the Jewish Palestinians. So the Muslim Palestinians had 5 invading nations helping them, and the Jewish Palestinians, 800,000 or so of them, they were on their own, fighting against not just the or the Muslim Palestinians, but against Egyptians, Syrians, Lebanese, Jordanians, and Saudis. It was David and Goliath that the Jewish Palestinians were faced with. So I think now, if they did succeed in wiping all the Jews out, driving them into the sea as they wish, if they succeeded in that there'd probably be another war between varying Arab nations trying to take over Israel. Because after that first war, 1948, 1949, the Gaza Strip was captured by Egypt, and they didn't make it a Palestinian state. They just said, that's ours. They incorporated it into Egypt. The Jordanians grabbed the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and they didn't create a Palestinian state. They just said, that's ours now. And the Jewish Palestinians got what was left. And on May 11th, 1949, the UN recognized the modern state of Israel. I'm going to read what's being written. Happy Sunday to you too, Jason King. God bless. Although now we have bled, at least in my time zone, it's now Monday morning. I was actually just getting ready to go to bed when I read about the president of Iran now being declared officially dead, widely reported. Initially, there were reports that, as I did my last video just a few hours ago, it was being reported that he was presumed dead, but now it's being reported they found the helicopter and everyone on board was killed. And Sharunian, yes, I am very much a night owl. I worked in a radar station for my last 6 years. I was at a radar station and used to work 12-hour shifts, and they were basically 2000 to 0800 or 0800 to 2000, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And 5 days in a row, 5 days on, five days off. It was brutal, and it really messed up your system. And anyway, so that's where we are. We'll see what I think things could accelerate, because I've been saying since this war broke out between Israel and this conflict, I've been saying it's going to escalate, and it has escalated, but I think it's going to escalate even more. And yeah, I should do another Justin Trudeau rant. Bill C-63, the more I read on that, the more I think there's a good chance I'm going to jail at some point, or I'm going to be under house arrest for having unacceptable views. Professing the Bible is going to be determined as hate speech at some point. And bring it on. Because I'm not repudiating my faith. I'm not repudiating my beliefs. Bring it. this life ain't the end. So eventually, at some point, I'm going home. There's a good Sunday message. At some point, I'm going home. When? That's not for me to say. It's not for me to know the hour or the day. Sharunian says, I'm as infamous as it gets. Hardly. I think there are individuals far better able to express the views that I express. But I think it's important for me to put my voice out there as well. Even though I'm no Jordan Peterson, I'm in genuine awe of that man's intellect and for his ability to craft words into arguments and to put forth his ideas. He is a genius, and I so much enjoy listening to him. He just did a recent one with a guy who I'm not very familiar with, and I can't even remember his name now. And but it's a podcast that just dropped where Jordan Peterson was guesting on another podcast, and it was excellent because they handled so much about like the confronting the atheist argument that everything that in this world that it's just we're the end result of trillions of random accidents, and it's just I cannot wrap my head around intellectually how anyone can think that this world, that this incredibly diverse and complex world where everything works together so incredibly tightly and that it's random, that out of chaos came high order. No, entropy says the laws of thermodynamics state that you move from high order to chaos, not the other way around. But I can't express it with nearly the same degree of clarity that Jordan Peterson can. And Sharunian Allegiance is asking my thoughts, and you do this to me all the time, Sharunian. What's your thoughts on Jared Taylor, who's apparently a white supremacist? I don't know who Jared Taylor is. Now you're making me look up something else. Jared Taylor. I don't have much use for white supremacists or any racists of any description. I consider Black Lives Matter to be a racist organization. I think there are a lot of good-minded people, people with good hearts who have attached themselves to that movement because, on the surface, if you don't look too deep and you see the racial inequality that does still exist in the United States, okay, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but if you dig into it even just a little, you'll find out it's deeply Marxist. And it has a very racist ideology. And anyway, that was my last video. So I'm going to look that up. I'll give you my thoughts on another night. Jared Taylor. Never heard of the person. But anyway, I'm going to bed. God bless. Thank you for the 2 thumbs up. And we'll see what happens. Might do one tomorrow night talking about the aftermath. It's early morning. The sun is going up right now in the Middle East. So in Israel, in Iran, right now it's morning there. And so if something's going to happen, it's probably going to happen quick. There have been reports, though, that there have been fireworks celebrations in Iran itself. I don't know whether that's true. Again, the old thing about propaganda. In the West, Israeli supporters will want to paint Iran as the bad guy. And so their leadership is the bad guy. And so having their own citizens celebrate the death of their president would, it helps the Israeli cause. And I'm not saying it's true or not true. I'm saying I don't know. But anyway, God bless. That's enough. 30 minutes long. I got to go. I got to go to bed. All right. We'll talk to y'all later. Night. And thanks again, everyone. Christian apologist, Sharunian, Jason King, all of you. Thank you very much for chiming in. I always appreciate it. Good night.